Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for joining us at Thoughtful Thursdays with Tornado IP Consulting. And I'm here today again with Andi Kirk and Brad Taylor. And Andi, we met in a previous podcast. She spent her career at Dow and Roman Haas working at the intersection of R&D and information management. As Thoughtful Thursdays is diving into how information is managed in the chemical and manufacturing industries, I've thought that she's a really valuable voice in how she's thinking about this, in particular at that time when we are implementing AI. And she has led global technical information services and built the systems that enable scientists and engineers to actually find, use, and apply knowledge across the enterprise, which in an R&D heavy organization, it goes across R&D, manufacturing, and sometimes other functions as well, people reporting and recording their information. Her work has focused on integrating internal and external information as well, building knowledge repositories and ensuring that critical expertise doesn't get lost as organizations evolve. So this type of a hat that she wears, I think, is particularly relevant for AI implementation. So we wanted to continue this conversation, and we invited Brad Taylor to join us, who is joining us from DuPont. She's technical laureate with more than 30 years in R&D and product development, and he has led the development of commercial technologies from early stage innovation through market applications with deep expertise in stage gate development, cross-functional collaboration, and intellectual property. So he brings the perspective of someone who has not only created innovation, but had to protect, translate, and scale into a real business value. So again, I feel like this conversation between the scientist who has seen it all and Andi, I think we can bring some additional insights into what it's like to manage information in a company, in a market, where you need to protect your information in order to keep in business. So what's interesting that between the two of you've seen both sides of the same problem, creating innovation, then making sure the organization can retain it, access it, and use it. So I have a few questions, which, we can take turns answering. And I'm also happy to join in. I have worked with both, I have had the fortune to work with both Brad and Andi in the same type of environment, thinking about information and IP. Where does critical knowledge break down inside R&D organizations? And how is AI changing that for better or worse, Brad, in your opinion?
Well, first of all, Sylvia, I need to just say thank you for that introduction. And although I work for DuPont and still work for DuPont, all the opinions everything I say today will be my own opinion. So I think everyone is really busy at work these days. There's not a lot of overcapacity in terms of resources. And the critical knowledge gap that, I think we see most of the time is really just being able to keep track of all of the things that that we're doing. So a lot of it is bookkeeping. A lot of it is looking for better tools. Those are the primary things that we're wrestling with, along with everything else that we're doing.
So that you are really at the forefront of trying to use AI tools and implementing AI tools. And in your opinion, is AI helping you? Is it changing access to critical information for better or worse?
I definitely think it's changing for the better. I mean, I'm a big AI advocate. It's obviously in its infancy still. At least we'll look back years from now and say that, I think. And the things it's doing are not really groundbreaking, but they are time-saving. I was a little bit of a skeptic at first because things I would try with AI in the early days when we had access, to certain levels of resources and really at home as well, playing around with it. When I would do the kinds of things that would help me or help anyone in a technical role, I would get mixed results. But once I learned to do prompts differently, and I learned what it did well, I was able to shift what I was doing, adapt, and I've really been impressed at its capabilities. So I think that beyond the easy stuff that I think most people use AI for now, which is probably to improve their writing, their email responses, things like that, there is a lot of organizational things that it can do, and there's a lot of things that it can do in tying concepts together. And I won't go as far as say that it has a great grasp or understanding of fundamentals, but it ends up successfully being able to put concepts together and connect things that that previously weren't connected and present them to you that way. So I've been impressed, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work with it.
Have you had any experience, Brad, before I turn this over to Andy, because Andy and I talked about the quality of data that as a frustration for the internal data that goes into in data management system. This is before AI even, Have you had any experience with AI from that perspective, looking at internal, like researching what is in lab notebooks and research reports?
Not really the latter two, but so I don't really have a direct answer to your question from a quality of data standpoint. What I will say is maybe this sneaks into that category a little bit. In the day-to-day work, if we want to think about IP, for example, or maybe data that we might be preparing or might eventually go into IP preparation at some point in the future, it definitely has helped with the organization of the latter. And of the former, it's also improved the time required. And by that I mean things like patent searching and what you can do with the result of a patent search. Whether it be you're looking just at what the competitor is doing, you're looking at a specific area because you've got an idea, you're looking to understand what what a specific technology is, or you're doing a freedom to operate search. All of those things typically start with a list of patents. And then you need to go through those one by one and do what you need to do with each of those references towards your task. And it's really tedious. And when you have a lot of noise in this list of patents that you've got, it just makes it all the longer of a task. But when you use AI to intelligently pare down that list, it makes it much easier. So the quality of, I think, what you end up with, getting back to your original question, is improved in that regard.
Andy, do you have any comments?
Well, I certainly can see how the experiences that Brad's having is helping to accelerate identifying issues in an IP search and or issues in your technology, or making connections between concepts that you didn't do on your own. I think ultimately, to get the most value out of AI, the same thing as trying to get, when we were in the early days, just trying to get value out of an internal technical repository, because no one will organize your internal stuff for you. That has to come from within the organization. The outside stuff, patent information or the technical journals, things like that, that has already been curated and kept up to date for our behalf. I mean, pay dearly for it. And that same sort of thing, to get the value out of your own information, you have to put that time and money in some way yourself, or else applying those tools to your own technology won't, you'd be concerned that you're missing things, but I do think organizations like, DuPont, Dow, Roman Haas, the top companies understand that the product of research is basically information, and if we don't curate it for ourselves, then it would be our loss. So I think that I guess in a sense it's a caution, because you don't know where the holes are in your own data unless you go try to figure that out.
Yeah, I agree. I think what I was thinking about, and I was thinking about this question myself, is I actually remember two different instances when a big chemical company filed a patent application, and I'm going to name the company, and the patent office came back and citing their own patent against them, saying that this has already been invented and submitted and patented, and they just
I know that.
Yeah. So I think this just highlights how important it is to be able to search your own information. And I mean, this is a patent actually, so you should have found the patent. It's a public, information too. But so the search is so important.
The responsible scientists and whatnot have to want to do that thorough search. I mean, it will get found out eventually, but those kinds of things can still happen, I'm sure. But I also think the important thing about things like patent, what AI has brought to the table, is the ability to search. When I was developing systems for the scientists to use, we could manage structured data, numbers, in one database, and text and documents in another database. There was no algorithm that existed that could search across data and text together, and that included that it couldn't search graphs and tables and text together. But I think AI has conquered that piece of the holy grails that are out there in the information world, seemingly.
So,
Yeah.
any comments on that, Brad?
Yeah, I think it's a great point that Andy made, and it becomes a potential blind spot that companies need to worry about if they continue to develop and flourish with AI, cutting time and making certain tasks more efficient. They've got to understand that legacy information that might be in notebooks or other forms, if it's not accessible, then that's something that you're going to maybe pay a penalty for not knowing about when you're getting these, doing all of these other things at a much more efficient level. So that needs to be taken into account and resolved one way or another.
Yeah, we were talking about this in my conversation earlier this week with Dr. Fan Lee. We were talking about how AI is very powerful as it is, but it still needs to be trained when you are wanting it to apply itself to some tricky terrain. And I do view like notebooks and research reports that different scientists have contributed to as a tricky terrain, because it's more tricky than a city's traffic signs, And AI needs to learn each city. You put a bunch of driverless cars in San Francisco, and it's doing great. You can't take those driverless cars and stick them in Philadelphia to start operating. You're going to have people there to teach them again, to make sure they recognize the Philadelphia traffic flow. So, and I don't know if this is going to get faster over time, but to me, this implies that if you're going to apply AI to certain companies' internal reports, you're going to need some human help to train it. And if you just apply it and don't do that training, you're going to miss some stuff, you're going to misinterpret things. And I don't know if that is something that people are thinking about everywhere in every company. Brad, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree completely. That's something that is going to be a challenge for companies to do. I'm hopeful that that's happening now, and as people roll out more AI resources to employees, that they are taking care of that. But that's a valid area that's got to be dealt with one way or the other. You need to make sure that folks know, what's included in the output they're getting from their AI responses that are all, kept wrapped up internally with the company. What all does this include? We need to know those boundaries so we can properly interpret the results.
Well, there are companies that are doing it, because as a retiree, I get job offers off of LinkedIn. If you want to be use your expertise to train AI systems, I could be working remotely. Have no interest, but I can. So, I do think people are starting to, as I said, no one will organize your internal information for you, your technical, engineering, whatever. And I think ultimately companies will realize, they already have at least the chemical companies, most of them have internal technical document repositories of one variety or another. And why wouldn't you want to apply the AI algorithms on top versus just what now are just simple search algorithms that these systems probably still have, right? So, with its ability to organize it and prioritize and all that kind of stuff. Which was the reason we wanted to take I started this in 1998 when everybody's technical reports were sitting in file cabinets. People were starting to put things online themselves, right? But it's evolution. Slow.
Yeah, and data is data. I feel like that's something that we don't hear about enough. It's not like if AI becomes as smart as a human being, it's going to come up with that data, So being able to have access to the data and the interpretation of the data is going to have to happen.
Yeah, I don't know enough personally about AI to understand how it makes any kind of inference, right? Now, I understand how it can present to you, okay, you wanted to know about topic A. Here are things that mention topic A, this one 5 times, this one 3, I can order them according to how many times they recite, it was mentioned and those kinds. But drawing inferences, that's a little, more subtle. And it's been, suggested that there are examples of that, but I don't know them myself.
I've seen it make mistakes. I do pay attention to this kind of stuff because I'm a super detailed person, and Brad also. So if I'm doing a patent search, I'm going to, before I make a conclusion on that patent based on some AI generated abstract, I'm going to take a look at that patent. And I do see it make mistakes, It's very, very pretty outputs. For example, we had a podcast episode on this list of patents from the Pentagon that the Pentagon was offering up free of license. And so Pentagon has this wonderful web page, which I am sure it's all AI generated, for every patent has a single page kind of summarizing what the strengths of this patent are. And so we looked at a couple of these patents with my colleague Mike Bowe, and there are some big conclusions about this particular patent that was interesting to us, about all the different technologies that it was applied in, that it was great for. But once we looked at the claims, which is typically when I look at a patent to really come to conclusions, I do look at all the independent claims, it was way broader and way more valuable than what you would have thought if you just stayed on that page, on the abstract page from the Pentagon. It was a really nice chemical composition patent, basically, the independent claims. So like you could use that patent for a lot of different things besides what the interpretation had. And I've seen multiple instances in the sciences where even well-structured data, such as a patent, is misinterpreted. So, I don't know, hopefully that'll get better, but I would expect significant training has to happen. If driverless cars can't shift from one city to another, this is a more complicated terrain.
Absolutely. Well, and especially as the products that are getting developed are more complicated, they touch on more different disciplines, and that all makes any kind of automated action against it more complicated, right? Because things have to be linked, and you have to maybe do it in two different, just if that's the way you're going to use it, if that's a way people will apply AI eventually. I understand now to automate certain, repetitive tasks and things like that can save, it's the ongoing promise of, electronic technology, right, is making us more productive, right? So, it kind of follows that stream of things that has come along during my lifetime.
So, getting back to our questions, will an innovative AI bot be able to replace an inventor from a company? Brad, what do you think eventually?
No, but I think it will help streamline a number of things. When I was thinking about this question, I couldn't help but think back to, as a technical person, all the times in my career where I participated in an idea generating session or a brainstorming session. I've probably done that 10 to 15 times. And a number of your listeners, I'm sure, have done similar things. You've probably done them. You both have probably done them. And they have 4 or 5 steps in them, and they all start with some type of description of the problem. And maybe you're trying to solve a specific competitive issue, or maybe your business is trying to spur some long-term growth, and you just want new ideas of what to do or what to invest in. But you set the table with a problem that you want to brainstorm on. And that's what you do with a human version. And if you had an AI version, that would be basically the prompt that you would give the AI. And the next step is the big step, and that's the generation of ideas. And in the human version, everyone gets a 2x2 Post-it notepad, and they write down their ideas, right? And you put them up on the wall. You've all been in the same rooms with the walls
full
of course, Post-it notes. And that's something in the AI version that it can do, and it probably can do well. I've read articles about people saying that it does do it well. It does generate ideas extremely well and connect concepts together and things like that. I haven't dived into that yet, but that's something that AI could do at that stage, and it could do it well. But then the next step is you've got to discuss the ideas so that everyone knows what they are. And I guess AI could do a version of that. But then, as I think Andy just hinted at, now you need to organize the ideas. And just by virtue of organizing them, you are already using some know-how that the AI doesn't have. And then you're going to prioritize them. So you organize and you prioritize. Usually it's a combined step. And that is something the AI might be able to try to do, but it's not going to have those elements that are important for invention, for innovation, for what's critical to solving the problem that you may be looking at. You're not going to have the frustration or the gut feel that the human has. The insight, the know-how, those things the AI is not going to have. At the end, the last step is you're going to actually scout some limited number of these ideas, and that, of course, the AI can't do. For technical work, so that's a hands-on thing. So if I look at those 5 steps, AI can help you speed up about 1.5 of them, and that's about it.
Yeah, I've often I don't think it can replace the researcher either. And what comes to my mind is AI is going to work on with everything you know today, whatever you have in there, right? And what I think about sometimes is, well, there are things, yeah, and maybe through putting concepts together, maybe that's how as a human we come up with a new idea. To me, for something really innovative, a new, I don't know quite how to describe it, but it doesn't necessarily come out of what's already known. It comes out of the synthesis in somebody's brain, some unique individual with a unique set of experiences putting this stuff together and coming out with a really new, important area to go explore. And that's the part that I don't see, because AI can only extrapolate from what's already known, and there's still things we don't know. You know what I mean? And that's the piece that I think the researcher, the scientist, the engineer is always going to bring to the problem, like you said, the know-how, the skills, the insight the individuals have. I don't know. I mean, they say the next, what do they call it? Regenerative AI, whatever the next phase is, that it's going to be, conscious. It's going to have, be, anyway, but it's going to be aware and be able to do those kinds of things. But I have a hard time seeing that at the level of complexity that a scientist or an engineer work for the new thing.
Yeah, I think I've seen similar conclusions, Andy, by Terence Tao, who's a really famous
Oh, good.
mathematician physicist, and
I still
yeah,
think I'm on a good path. There you go.
he was also saying similar things that, in physics and math, they have been able to use Gen AI tools to like connect remote dots that humans could have done, but it would take a really, really long time. Like people done research papers on remote fields, and like those pieces can be connected, and some new insights gained.
Yeah.
But he also says that creativity is someplace that it's not coming up with things from just creative insights like a human would right now.
Right. You don't know where it can go.
Yeah, but I think that the reason we're here today is more about, my fascination is about using the internal information and the existing information, and it's not as simple as it's presented publicly, in my opinion, to leverage internal information, which is in tremendous value. So this actually leads to my next question is, and we kind of have been answering it a little bit, is does AI have access to all the information it needs to have? And I'm really thinking about, when I'm developing IP strategy and R&D strategy, business strategy, the types of information I need are so diverse. I will need information like company know-how, paid for subscriptions to know what others are doing, business and market research and information, and this has so much information that has to be accurate as much as possible. We'll purchase market reports, we will purchase literature subscriptions, we have access to our internal databases. Being able to ask good questions, if you have this amount of data, let's say you manage to get all this data in, but like the amount of data you're churning through is insane. So if you ask good questions is what's the most important thing, like if you ask a really good question, like you're gonna get some really cool thing. But if you ask and not such a good question, it can just churn and churn and churn and churn and churn. What are your thoughts on that?
So I'm not sure I'm answering it directly, Sylvia. Apologies in advance if I'm not. But I think maybe a related question that gets you to the same place is what should it have? Some of those things you mentioned, I wouldn't want my AI to know about. I mean, I've gone back and seen market reports that have been nowhere close to what ever happened in reality. I'm not sure buying market reports is really a great idea for figuring out what you want to do. So I think you're going to want to figure out what it is you want your AI to have knowledge of based on what you're going to be doing with it. And it's not just give it everything we have, because I think you may be shooting yourself in the foot if you make that decision. I think you need a careful assessment of what it needs, what's reasonable to give it. Trade secrets, know-how, that may just not be reasonable to give your AI. You may have to learn how to work with your AI without it. So I think that's going to take some careful thought. I certainly don't have the answers, but I think that's something that needs to be thought through carefully.
Interesting. What do you think, Wendy?
Yeah, what was going through my mind, and it's related to what Brad was saying, is within the system, the AI system, you're going to have security based on who can see and access what, right? And once you start putting levels of security on the information, to me that says that different people, if they ask the same question, they're going to get different answers. And do you put your trade secrets in there, and what do you miss if you don't? But no one's going to put their trade secrets in a system that's open to, whatever, 1,200 scientists. And even within that, you're going to have stratification of who can see what. And I think that's also going to make the use of AI complicated, because there's some of your most sensitive stuff, your newest stuff, your most unusual and distinct stuff. You want to leverage that and build off of it, and that's what a tool like AI can suggest it can do. But then the security issues of having that information that you want tightly held for proprietary reasons can also make the use of the tool, have holds for one person and not for another. So I don't, it just confuses, my head gets confused even trying to talk about it. Because it gets very complicated very quickly.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I guess it kind of ties to my next question, which I think the both of you might have different answers to. Will companies give access to all their corporate in-house information? And how is this secured in the AI world? I guess your answer might be yes or no.
Never.
Well,
I
I
smart. You just can't. Unfortunately, in this world, you can't trust people. I can understand why organizations would not want to trust people with, competitive espionage and all that, which is clearly still going to be. I can't see senior management ever trusting the organization for there not to be some leak somehow, some way, and I think they're wrong. I don't, I mean, the big holy grail for when we were doing things was to have the ability to know if somebody's printing off a large volume of information out of the database while it's happening, so you could shut them down. So same thing if you're writing a lot of things to a flash drive or something like that. The normal ways people might try to walk out with your most important technical information.
Yeah. Brad, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to answer that question in terms of my company, but what I will say is that, like anything else, you're going to have to make a decision on what you're going to give the AI access to. In terms of your question, I think the answer is no in general. I mean, today companies limit where they keep and how they keep their trade secrets and their know-how. And you do that intentionally. You limit access to those things.
Absolutely.
Why would you give it to your AI system unless it really needs it? So there might be times when you do and times when you don't. But as a general rule, I would think that the answer is probably going to be no.
Yeah, I agree. So this kind of leads us to our lightning round, which I have 5 questions here, and I feel like we've answered one already, but I just want to reiterate. And just tell me if you agree. The first question is, can AI replace an inventor? And I think we all agreed that the answer to that is no. Is that correct?
I think so, sure.
And then, does AI actually have the knowledge needed to innovate? Is the next question.
It depends. Maybe. I mean, in certain applications, if the people involved really understand AI and they also have their subject matter knowledge, I'm sure there are cases where this idea of being able to bring disparate information together and then have the computer, not human eyeballs, look for similarities and so forth. I think that's very powerful. And also the ability to bring not necessarily obviously related sets of information together, looking for innovation across boundaries of disciplines or areas of subject matter expertise. It's impossible to do that as a human being, more than once in your lifetime. Asking those questions in an AI system, you could look for 100 things in a day. So I think just how it makes it so easy to do that, to be fruitful, and there can be innovation there, but not all. It's not the be-all, end-all way.
So I think that actually gets to my the last. I think the last lightning round question is: will better questions become more valuable than better tools?
Now you're getting philosophical.
Well, it's not, Andy, because I find I am using AI a lot these days, and I'm mostly using it for marketing. I've also done a little bit of psychoanalysis for my children, and I find that
Does that help? Oh, sorry.
Yes. I did the psychoanalysis and I ran it by a therapist who said, "Oh my God, are you going to replace me?" So I find that the better questions I ask, Absolutely, the better, and I am very good at really, really sort of revising, reprompt engineering, and I'm getting really, really good at that for marketing my company, Tornado IP. Getting it to give me feedback, questioning the feedback, this kind of back and forth, it's phenomenal. However, this is because there's all kinds of data on the stuff I'm asking, right? Like I am sure there's all kinds of free marketing, phenomenal marketing resources on the web that's being mined here. As well as I'm sure there's a ton of psychoanalysis and therapy sessions that I'm mining. But again, now that I'm coming to the science, we're trying to do science, the quality is gonna be huge, and then directing that Gen AI to mine even quality stuff like patents, like don't make any conclusions on what that patent covers without looking at the independent claim. I'm going to have to put that into my prompt. Otherwise, it's going to come up with some conclusion based on the summary of the patent. That's probably what happened in what I was observing. And so, like, that's the thing. Like, you're going to have to observe how mistakes are being made in the area that you're trying to question and keep on improving your prompt, which I guess trains the system. But I mean, I think that's an issue. The quality of data in there, how you're questioning it, how you're training it, you're gonna have to train it. And I think for many cases, not having all the data in there is an issue for science, for sure. Like we absolutely, as a scientist, I need to have access to all the journal articles that have been written on the topic I'm interested in. And when I'm asking my Copilot ChatGPT question, it might not have access to that. So I want to make sure that's all linked in. So I almost envision this as a unique individual little bot system for science that has all the subscriptions that I need, like within my company that I'm working in. Then now I can query and I can be comfortable that I'm not going to miss something. And I think that's kind of thing is happening in other subject matter areas. Certainly.
But those underlying subscriptions, allowing you to take one of their or two of their journal articles, make a copy of it, and stick it in your internal AI system. You're not going to like that. That's the new use. They're going to have to make some money off of that. So, it all gets complicated,
Yeah. Well, the New York Times is suing ChatGPT right now for taking its content. So again, like even for that,
that's exactly what I'm saying, right? That's what you would be. That's what you would be doing. You would be taking the American Chemical Society's bread and butter, or whatever, subscription service you want to use. I was going to say something else, but anyway, that would get a little dicey. But you create your own little information sphere that you can work in. Oh, I know what I was going to say. When we just even started with, Google, getting back to about questions being important. Everybody started as a one-word searcher. Nordstrom's, whatever, shoes, whatever. I think most of us learned is you were able to put a query together, a search query together that was 2 words or 3 words, or even using Boolean terms, ands and ors, put things that keep things. You get more sophisticated, and I think all these AI tools, it's now learning how to make questions, right? You can start out pretty simple, but as it evolves and you evolve with it, those skills will develop.
Yes, you're training it. You're training it to get better. So when the other person's asking questions, they're gonna start to make those assumptions that they're gonna be properly trained. The tool is gonna search better.
Yeah.
You're training the tool to be a better searcher because you were prompt engineering.
Right, and it can do it faster than we can, right?
Any last comments before we close?
Sure, 2 quick things. So to answer your last question, I think in a world of infinite answers, the better questions is the big advantage. But more importantly, Sylvia, are you doing surgery on your kids as well, or just limiting it?
That's if I had to, I would, but hopefully I don't.
Let's stay away from
You'll
that.
have access to medical help.
Well, I mean, the AI is supposed to be phenomenal. All the robotic surgeries, Yes, the doctor is standing there. But I think medicine is definitely a space where they're really, really engineering the tool to be really, really, really good. Because some people in this planet don't have access to medicine. So, having really, really good AI robot to train a surgeon in a third world country might be a wonderful thing.
Absolutely.
Andy, any last minute?
No, I'm good.
Okay, thank you so much. This has been really, really lovely conversation, and we will see you in our next episode of Thoughtful Thursdays.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, Brad.